You never think today is the day your whole life will shatter. 1 minute, I was cruising down Route 14, windows cracked just enough to let in that crisp fall air. The radio humming some Bruce Springsteen tune I wasn't really listening to. And then nothing. Not a blur, not a scream. Just black. When I opened my eyes, the world was pain. White hospital walls. Beeping monitors. Tubes everywhere. It felt like waking up inside a science experiment. A nurse leaned over me, her voice calm, clinical. "You're lucky, Mr. Lawson. You shouldn't have made it." I didn't feel lucky. The accident left my left leg shattered, 3 ribs broken, and my spirit in 1,000 more pieces than my bones. They said a semi drifted into my lane. I didn't remember it. What I did remember was the feeling of being undone. Like everything I'd built. My quiet bachelor life, my freelance editing career, my gym routine, even my sense of invincibility was gone. Gary was the first to visit. We'd known each other since college. He's one of those guys who hides behind sarcasm like it's chainmail. He stood by the hospital bed with his arms crossed and a half-eaten granola bar in his hand. "Dude," he said, shaking his head, "you looked better when you flunked calculus drunk in '09. I tried to chuckle. Hurt like hell. "You'll walk again, they say?" he asked. "Eventually. Damn. Was hoping you'd at least get a cool robot leg or something. Make this story worth telling at bars." That was Gary. Emotionally allergic, but loyal as hell. The next few weeks were a blur of physical therapy, awkward sponge baths, and thinking, so much thinking. You've got time when you can't move. I started asking myself questions I'd avoided for years. Why was I still single at 36? Why did every relationship I'd had fizzle out in the same cold, quiet way? Why did I keep people at arm's length? Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was easier to feel nothing than to risk everything. But that all changed the day I met Stella. It was stupid, really. I was waiting for a follow-up x-ray, sitting in the hospital lounge, flipping through a magazine I wasn't reading. That's when I heard laughter. Sharp, musical, and kind of mesmerizing. I looked up and saw her. Stella. She was wearing a cream trench coat, phone in one hand, a clipboard in the other. She was arguing with a nurse, something about a medication error, but she had this grace to her even when angry. Her hair was this dark chestnut, swept up in a loose bun, and her voice, like someone who smoked in her youth and still sipped red wine religiously. I couldn't stop staring. It wasn't just that she was beautiful. It was something else, a kind of fire in her. Like life hadn't been easy, but she wasn't the type to back down. "You should close your mouth," the nurse beside me said, chuckling. "You'll catch flies." I snapped out of it, embarrassed. But I couldn't get her out of my head. That night, I dreamt of her laughing, not at the nurse, but at something I said. A real laugh like we were already something. Gary rolled his eyes when I told him. "Dude," he said, chewing on a fry at our favorite diner. "She's probably married. We're toxic. We're both. That's how they usually come. She had this presence, man. Like, I don't know, gravity. Like she pulls you in. Sounds like a trap. Maybe. But I'm curious." He sighed. Curiosity killed the idiot. Still, I couldn't help myself. I started hanging out more at the hospital cafeteria. Pathetic, right? But after what happened to me, I wasn't about to let a connection slip through my fingers, even a weird, one-sided one. One afternoon, I saw her again. She was sitting alone this time, sipping coffee and scribbling something in a notebook. I limped over, my crutches squeaking. "Mind if I sit?" She looked up, surprised. Her eyes, hazel with little flecks of gold, met mine. "It's a free country," she said, half smiling. And just like that, we talked. About the awful hospital food, about the weather, about books. She was sharp, sarcastic, warm in this way that made me feel seen. I learned she was a case manager, juggling 100 patients, a teenage daughter, and a marriage she described as complicated. I didn't ask more. Not yet. But something in the way she said it, half defeated, half defiant, told me there was a story there. One I wanted to know. One I wanted to be part of. I didn't expect to fall. But from the moment I met Stella, I was already halfway gone. The thing about Stella was that she never made it easy. After that first conversation in the hospital cafeteria, I expected, I don't know, a follow-up moment, a smile the next day, a nod in the hallway, some kind of signal that she'd felt it too, that spark that had me limping all the way back just to catch a glimpse of her. But the next time I saw her, she walked right past me, didn't even blink. I stood there like an idiot, crutch under my arm, heart in my throat. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it all. Maybe she was just being polite. Maybe it was just hospital small talk, and I was reading into it like a sad rehab patient with too much time on his hands. Gary, of course, was delighted. "Oh no," he said, sipping from his never-empty cup of black coffee. "You caught feelings for a mirage. Happens to guys in trauma wards all the time." "I'm serious," I said. "There was something there." "Yeah, it's called painkillers. Wait until they wear off." But I wasn't giving up. I knew what I felt. And if I'd learned anything from surviving that crash, it was this: life's too damn short not to go after what moves you. So I waited. I went back to the cafeteria at the same time every day for a week. I even learned how to balance a tray with one crutch just so I wouldn't look pathetic. And on Thursday, like clockwork, she was back. Same trench coat, same black coffee, same tired fire in her eyes. I sat down across from her like we were old friends. "You're persistent," she said, not looking up from her notebook. "I'm recovering," I replied. "Physically, emotionally, spiritually. Part of my treatment plan is annoying, interesting women." That got a smirk. "You're a mess," she said. "You have no idea." She finally looked up. For a second, the air between us went still. And just like that, we talked again. More this time. I learned she had a daughter, Suzanne, 16, brilliant, with a heart condition that kept her in and out of hospitals since she was 9. Stella's eyes softened when she talked about her. You could tell Suzanne was the center of her world. Her marriage? She didn't go into detail. Just said, "It's not what it used to be," and changed the subject. But I could read between the lines. The way her mouth tightened at the mention of her husband. The way she looked over her shoulder every time her phone buzzed. It was all there. The cracks. The weight. Still, I kept my distance. Sort of. Emotionally, I was all in. Physically, I waited. Mostly. I tell myself, "You're just talking. It's harmless." But deep down, I knew I was treading water in dangerous seas. She was married. Complicated. She had a life I didn't belong in. But that didn't stop me. If anything, it pulled me in further. One rainy afternoon, I invited her to a quiet corner of the hospital lounge where I'd started working again. Editing medical brochures, ironically. She sat across from me, eyeing my laptop screen. "Do you really read all that?" she asked. "I'm paid to. Doesn't mean I understand it." She chuckled and then grew quiet. Her fingers toyed with the edge of a napkin. "I used to want to be a writer," she said suddenly. I looked up. "Really?" "Yeah, back before everything. Before bills and doctors and balancing 100 things at once. I had a blog once. Wrote about coffee, politics, bad dates." "You stopped." Life got loud. I didn't say anything for a second. Then I leaned forward. "You should write again." She looked at me like I just told her she could fly. "You don't know what you're talking about," she said softly. "Maybe not. But I know people who have fire in them. And yours is still burning." That was the first time she touched my hand. Just briefly. A graze. But it left a scorch. The weeks rolled on. My rehab continued, and my visits to the hospital became less frequent. But my time with Stella? It grew. She started texting me, casually at first, "You still alive?" Or "They served mystery meat again." But the texts became longer, deeper. At night, I'd lie in bed, leg throbbing, heart thudding, rereading her messages. Then one day, she asked if I wanted to meet somewhere outside the hospital. "Just coffee," she said. I told myself it was harmless. We met at this tucked-away cafe 2 towns over. She showed up in jeans and a hoodie, hair down, sunglasses on like she was hiding from the world. When she saw me, she smiled, an unguarded, real smile. We talked for hours. And when we parted ways, she kissed me on the cheek. That was the moment I knew there was no going back. There's a moment right before you do something irreversible when the world goes quiet. It's not dramatic like the movies. No violin swell. No slow-motion gasp. Just silence. Like your conscience is holding its breath, waiting to see if you're really going to jump. That's how it felt the night Stella showed up at my apartment. She texted me first. "Can I come over?" It was 9:43 p.m. I remember that detail, because I stared at the screen for a full minute, thumb hovering over the reply button, knowing what her question really meant. Could have said no. I could have respected her boundaries, the boundaries I'd been slowly chipping away at for weeks. But I didn't. I just sent back, "Doors open." 15 minutes later, she stepped inside like she'd done it 100 times before. No trench coat this time. Just a thin sweater and jeans, hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She looked tired, beautiful but worn out, like someone holding too many invisible weights. She didn't say anything, just walked up to me where I stood in the living room, still using one crutch. Then she reached for my face and kissed me. It wasn't a rushed, passionate thing. It was slow, heavy, like she needed to prove something, to me, to herself. And I kissed her back, because in that moment, nothing else existed. Not her husband. Not the promises I'd made to myself. Not even Gary's voice in my head screaming, "You're being an idiot, Larry." We didn't sleep together that night. At least, not in the way you're probably thinking. We just laid there, fully clothed, side by side on the couch. Our fingers laced together like two kids trying to defy the world with touch alone. She told me about Suzanne's latest cardiology scare. I told her about the nightmares I still had from the crash. I should have felt guilty, but I didn't. I felt alive. The next morning, she left before sunrise. No kiss goodbye. No promises. Just a whispered, "Thanks for letting me breathe." And just like that, we were something. Not a couple. Not friends. Not an affair, at least not yet. We were suspended in that messy in-between space where you pretend rules don't apply. Gary knew something was up almost immediately. "You're glowing," he said as we grabbed lunch a few days later. "Did you start meditating, or are you finally sleeping with a ghost?" I shrugged. "I've been writing again." "No, man. You've been smiling. Which means either you've lost your mind, or you're seeing someone." I stayed silent. He leaned back in his chair, smirk fading. "It's the married one, isn't it?" I looked away. "Jesus, Larry. Come on. She's not happy. And that makes it okay?" "No," I admitted. "But it makes it real." He leaned in. "You think being unhappy gives her a free pass? Or you won? I've seen this play out, man. They never leave. They say they will, but they don't. You'll end up alone, bruised, and 2 years older. Not everyone is like your ex." I snapped, louder than I meant to. Gary didn't flinch, just shook his head and said, "She's not who you think she is. But what if she was? What if she was the exception?" Stella started coming by more often after that. Sometimes in the middle of the night, when the silence of her own home became unbearable. Other times during the day when she could sneak away from work. Always with stories about patience, about Suzanne, about the suffocating loneliness of living a life that looked perfect from the outside. She told me her husband barely noticed when she disappeared for hours, that their conversations had boiled down to grocery lists and medical updates, that she felt more like a caretaker than a wife. I wanted to hate the guy, but mostly, I hated how easy it was to believe her. Then, one afternoon, everything shifted. We were lying on my bed, fully dressed, our bodies tangled like vines. She whispered, "Do you think we're bad people?" I hesitated. "No. I think we're broken people doing the best we can." She kissed me then, and this time we didn't stop at kissing. Afterward, she curled into my side, silent, and I knew some invisible line had been crossed. We couldn't go back. The thing about lines, though, is once you cross one, the next one gets easier. She started leaving things at my place, an extra hair tie, a bottle of lotion, her favorite tea. She brought Suzanne by once, under the pretense of checking on me during recovery. Suzanne was smart, shy, and painfully observant. "You're not just Mom's friend, are you?" she asked while Stella was in the bathroom. I nearly choked on my tea. We're close. She didn't say anything else. Just gave me this look. Curious, a little sad, maybe even protective. I'd expected a sick kid to be fragile, but Suzanne had a steel spine. You could tell she'd grown up too fast. Later that night, Stella texted, "She likes you. That matters more than I thought it would." And still, no one talked about the elephant in the room, her marriage, until the day her husband called my phone. When the call came through, I was in the kitchen stirring a pot of burnt spaghetti. My phone buzzed on the counter, screen lighting up with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. "Hello." Silence. Then, "Is this Larry?" Something about the voice, deep, calm, but with a tension coiled underneath, made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. "Yeah. Who's this?" A pause. Then, "Stella's husband." I didn't respond. Couldn't. My mouth dried up so fast it was like someone had stuffed cotton down my throat. He continued, each word sharpened like glass. "I'm not calling to fight. I'm not calling to scream. I just want to know one thing." I swallowed. "What's that? Is she in love with you?" 1,000 thoughts slammed into my brain at once. How did he find me? Did Stella tell him? Was he bluffing? And most of all, was she? "She's your wife," I managed, dodging the question. "And yet, you're the one she's been sneaking off to see." His voice cracked just slightly at the edges. "You know how humiliating it is to find out this way? A text. She sent you something sweet. I was paying the damn phone bill. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? Sorry your marriage died while you weren't looking? I thought we were just drifting," he said. "But this is betrayal." I opened my mouth, closed it, then finally muttered, "I didn't mean for it to happen." He exhaled, bitter. "Nobody ever does." Then the line went dead. I stood there for a long time, phone in hand, the room spinning around me. My spaghetti boiled over, hissing and spitting like it was judging me too. When Stella showed up later that night, I told her about the call before she even took off her coat. Her expression went blank. Not surprised, just resigned. "I knew he'd find out eventually," she said quietly. "Guess I didn't expect it to come from Verizon." I stared at her. "You gave him your password?" "No," she said. "But he's smarter than I give him credit for. When he wants to be." I sank onto the couch. "He asked me if you're in love with me." She didn't answer right away. She walked to the window, arms crossed over her chest, eyes fixed on the rain outside like it had something important to tell her. Then she whispered, "I don't know what I am." That hurt more than I expected. She turned back to me. "You've been my escape, Larry. My sanity. My softness. But love? I don't even know what love looks like anymore." It wasn't the declaration I'd been hoping for, but it was honest. And still, she didn't leave. We stayed up all night, barely speaking, tangled in a silence that said more than any fight could. The fallout came quickly. First, the calls stopped. Stella went dark for 3 days. No texts, no pop-ins, nothing. I thought maybe her husband had pulled her back in. Maybe she'd chosen the safe road after all. Then came Gary. He showed up at my apartment like he owned the place, threw a bag of fast food on my coffee table and said, "So I hear things blew up." I blinked. "You heard." Small world. My ex's sister works in the same hospital. Word travels. I groaned. "Fantastic." He leaned back, kicked his shoes off, and unwrapped a burger. "So, you gonna keep torching your life or take a breath?" "I didn't plan for any of this." "You never plan. You just fall. Over and over again. Like a drunk at an ice rink. Thanks for the support." "I'm serious, Larry. I know she makes you feel alive. But at what cost? You look like crap. You're anxious all the time. This thing with Stella, it's not love. It's adrenaline." I didn't want to hear it, but I knew he was partly right. And yet, when Stella finally texted me 3 days later, I still went to her. She met me at a quiet motel off the highway, wearing sunglasses and a scarf like someone in an old noir film. Her hands trembled as she passed me the key. Inside, the room smelled like bleach and old stories. We sat on the bed, not touching, not talking, just existing in the same space. "He wants a separation," she said finally. "Not a divorce. Just time apart. For Suzanne's sake." I nodded. "And he asked me not to see you during that time." I looked at her. "Are you going to listen?" She didn't answer. That night, we slept back to back. And for the first time since she'd entered my life, I felt the icy breath of regret. Not because I didn't care, but because I was starting to realize caring wasn't enough. After that night in the motel, I didn't hear from Stella for almost 2 weeks. Not a single text. Not a midnight knock at my door. Nothing. She vanished like we'd never happened. And the thing that got me the most? I let her. I didn't call. Didn't chase. I told myself I was giving her space. That I was respecting her decision. But the truth? I was scared. Scared that if I reached out, I'd find out she had already returned to him. That she'd decided her marriage, broken or not, was safer than the risk of building something with me. So I waited. And in the quiet, the doubts started to fester. I stopped shaving. Let dishes pile in the sink. Spent too much time staring at the ceiling, asking questions I didn't want the answers to. Gary tried to pull me out of it. He showed up one evening with beer and a worn-out copy of Fight Club. "Come on," he said, tossing me the DVD. "Let's relive your 20s when you still had hope and hair." I gave a weak laugh. "You think watching people beat each other senseless will cheer me up?" He cracked open a beer. "No, but it might remind you life sucks less when you feel something, even if it's your face getting punched." I didn't watch the movie. Couldn't. My mind kept drifting back to her. What if she was hurting? What if she was lying next to him, pretending because she didn't know how to break the spell of routine? What if she missed me, but not enough? Then, out of nowhere, a message. "Stella, can we talk?" I'm at our cafe. Alone. I didn't even finish reading the text before I was grabbing my coat. When I walked in, I saw her immediately. No sunglasses. No scarf. Just Stella. Barefaced, pale, her coffee untouched. I sat down across from her, heart pounding so loud it felt like thunder in my ears. She looked up. "You look awful." I almost laughed. Takes one to know one. A fragile smile passed between us. Then she sighed. I told him I couldn't keep pretending, that I needed to find out what this "you" really meant. I leaned forward, hope crawling out of its hiding place. And he said if I walked out that door, I wasn't just leaving him. I was destroying our daughter's family. Silence. "He played the Suzanne card," I whispered. She nodded, fingers trembling as she stirred the coffee she wasn't drinking. "He said she deserves stability. That I owe her that." I clenched my jaw. "Does stability mean misery now?" "Maybe," she said. "But misery that's familiar." My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, wanted to reach across the table, shake her, beg her to choose herself for once. Choose me. But I didn't. Instead, I asked the question that had been haunting me. "Do you love me, Stella?" She froze, then looked me in the eye and said, "I want to." That crushed me in a way no accident ever could. I left the cafe before I said something I couldn't take back. That night, I sat in my apartment alone, and everything inside me cracked. I started pulling down the photos I'd taken of her, the texts I'd saved, the little note she'd scribbled once on a napkin. "Thank you for breathing with me." I deleted it all, or tried to, but pain doesn't delete that easy. It just waits, and festers. A week later, Gary invited me to a party. Some publishing event his new girlfriend was throwing. I said no a few times, but he wore me down. "Think of it as exposure therapy," he said. "There will be people, laughter, booze, possibly a functioning emotional adult." The place was packed. Hipsters, poets, editors who thought wearing glasses made them profound. And then I saw her. Cynthia, Gary's ex. I hadn't seen her since before the accident. She looked the same, sharp eyes, messy curls, the kind of woman who never apologized for her presence. "Larry?" she said, surprised. Wow, you're still alive. Physically, I said. Emotionally, the jury's out. She laughed. Sounds about right. We ended up standing near the makeshift bar, talking about everything and nothing. She asked about the accident. I told her bits and pieces. She told me about leaving a toxic startup, going freelance, living on caffeine and spite. It was easy. Too easy. For the first time in months, I wasn't weighed down by guilt or longing. I was just there. As the party thinned out, she said, "Come by my place. I make the worst tea and the best conversation." I hesitated. But then I remembered the look in Stella's eyes when she said she wanted to love me. And I nodded. Cynthia's place was warm and cluttered. Plants in weird corners. Books stacked sideways. Music humming low in the background. We didn't sleep together. Not that night. But we talked until 3 a.m. And somewhere between her rant about overpriced candles and my story about nearly burning pasta to death, I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like years. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I knew something had shifted, and I wasn't sure if Stella would be the woman at the end of this story anymore. There's a strange kind of quiet that settles in your life after heartbreak. Not the loud, dramatic kind with tears and shouting, but the low hum of absence, like you're still waiting for a song that never comes back on. That's what it felt like in the days after that party with Cynthia. I kept thinking about how easy she was to be around. No tension, no secrets, just conversations that didn't come with invisible strings. For once, I didn't feel like I was walking a tightrope. I was just existing, and it felt good. We started texting, grabbing lunch now and then. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people who'd been burned before trying to stand near warmth again without catching fire. But in the back of my mind always was Stella. Not in the romantic way, not anymore. At least that's what I told myself. But she lingered. In memories. In smells. In that quiet ache I couldn't name when I heard a song we used to play in my apartment. Even the silence between text reminded me of her. How she used to send me those late-night messages that said everything and nothing at once. So when her name popped up on my phone again, I stared at the screen like it was a ghost. "Stella, can you meet me? Just one time, please." 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since the cafe. Since the motel. Since I'd walked away. I should have ignored it. Instead, I texted back. "Where?" "We met at the park where she used to take Suzanne when she was little." It was dusk, and the swings creaked in the breeze. She was already sitting on one, rocking gently, her face unreadable. I approached slowly. "You look good," she said, barely meeting my eyes. "So do you." She looked thinner, paler, like she hadn't slept properly in weeks. "I won't take up much of your time," she said. I needed to tell you something in person." I braced myself. A pregnancy scare? A confession? A goodbye? Instead, she said, "Suzanne's in the hospital. Again." Her heart's acting up. My chest clenched. "Is she okay?" "She will be. They think it's a medication thing. But it's shaken her. Shaken me." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm sorry." "She asked about you," Stella added. "Said you were the only adult who ever talked to her like she wasn't made of glass." That nearly broke me. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because," she said, her voice trembling, "even though I said I didn't love you, I never stopped needing you." There it was. The grenade. I sat down on the swing next to her, letting the silence stretch. "That's not the same thing," I said quietly. "I know." We sat there for a long time. Not as lovers. Not as friends. Just two people with too much history and not enough clarity. She finally stood up, brushing her hands on her coat. "I'm not asking for anything," she said. "I just needed you to know." And she walked away. No hug, no kiss. Just the sound of her boots on gravel, fading into twilight. I didn't go after her. But that night I couldn't sleep. Not because I wanted her back, but because I realized something. I had never really let her go. Not completely. The next morning, Cynthia called. "You okay?" she asked. How'd you know I wasn't? Because your texts went from snarky to silent. And because I've been there. I told her everything. No edits. No spin. When I was done, she was quiet for a moment, then said, "Thank you for being honest." "You mad?" "No. I'm not surprised. I knew you were still carrying her." "I don't want to be." "Then don't be," she said. "You get to choose." That's the part people forget. Later that day, I found myself driving. Not toward Stella, but toward the hospital. I didn't go in. Just sat in the parking lot, watching the windows, wondering which one belonged to Suzanne. Then I pulled out my phone and sent one message. To Stella, "I hope she's okay. But I can't be your in-between anymore. I need more. Or nothing." She never replied. And strangely, I was okay with that. That night, Cynthia invited me over. We sat on her balcony drinking wine and listening to old records. Ever think we're all just broken people trying to glue ourselves to other broken people? I asked. Cynthia grinned. That's one way to look at it. Is there a better one? Maybe we're just survivors, she said. Learning how to build again, this time without leaving out the foundation. I looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, I didn't see her as a rebound or a band-aid. I saw her as a possibility, a real one, and I didn't know where it would go. But for the first time in a long time, I wanted to find out. There's a strange calm that comes with emotional clarity. Like you've been swimming upstream for months and suddenly realize you can just float. That's how things started to feel with Cynthia. She didn't rush me, didn't try to fill every silence or fix the parts of me that were still aching. She just showed up. We'd talk late into the night, her legs tucked under her on the couch, sipping from a chipped mug that said, "World's okayest adult." And when she laughed, really laughed, it didn't make me anxious the way it used to with Stella. It made me want to keep listening. We weren't official. Not yet. But something steady was building. Something real. I was finally learning what peace tasted like. So of course, that's when everything unraveled. It started with a knock. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was working from home, editing an article about congenital heart defects of all things. Ironic, right? When I opened the door, I froze. Stella. No trench coat. No makeup. Just a woman on the edge. "Can I come in?" she asked, eyes swollen and glassy. I stepped aside before I could think better of it. She walked in like she remembered every corner of the place. And maybe she did. I watched her scan the room, take in the new throw pillow Cynthia had picked out, the extra toothbrush in the bathroom cup. "This was a mistake," she said, backing toward the door. I gently grabbed her arm. "Stella, what happened?" She blinked fast, like she was trying to outrun the tears. "It's Suzanne." My stomach dropped. "Is she okay?" "No," her voice cracked. "She's in ICU. Heart failure. They're prepping for a transplant. But she's scared. And she's asking for you." I felt the air leave my lungs. "Me?" "She remembers how you talked to her. How you listened. She trusts you, Larry. More than she trusts anyone right now." That hit me like a freight train. Guilt. Fear. A surge of something I couldn't even name. I hadn't seen Suzanne in over a month. I tried to let go, for my sake, and for hers. "I shouldn't be there," I said. "You know that." "She's begging," Stella whispered. "I don't care about us. I don't care about what it means. Please, just come." I sat down, hands shaking. "What about your husband?" "He left," she said quietly. "Packed a bag 2 nights ago. Said he can't do it anymore." I told him I understood. I looked up at her, and for a second all I saw was a mother. Not the woman I fell for. Not the woman who broke me. Just a terrified, exhausted mother holding on by a thread. "I'll come," I said. For her. The hospital hadn't changed. Same sterile halls. Same 2 bright lights. But the second I saw Suzanne hooked up to all those machines, her face pale and drawn, I forgot every reason I'd stayed away. "Hey, kid," I said softly. Her eyes fluttered open. "Larry?" "Yeah." I pulled a chair close. "Heard you needed someone to argue with." A tiny smile tugged at her lips. "You brought snacks." "Of course." smuggled in some contraband chocolate pudding. We talked for an hour. Not about heart stuff. Not about the pain. Just books, life, dumb YouTube videos. And in that moment, I realized something. Some relationships aren't meant to be romantic. Some are meant to heal. When the nurse came to check her, I stepped out to find Stella sitting on a bench in the hallway. Her hands were in her lap, fidgeting with the same silver ring she always wore. "She missed you," she said without looking up. I sat beside her, careful not to get too close. "She's strong," I said. "Stronger than either of us." Stella nodded. "They say she'll need a donor within weeks. The list is long, but we're praying for a miracle." There was a long pause. Then she said, "I wasn't fair to you." I looked at her. "You weren't ready. That's not the same thing. I strung you along. You were unraveling. I just got tangled up in the process." She finally looked at me, and for once, there was no fire, just sorrow. "Do you still love me?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I thought about Cynthia, about laughter over bad tea, about how healing isn't always dramatic. It's quiet, steady, like a tide pulling you towards something whole. "I think I'll always care," I said. "But no, not like before." She nodded, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. "I hope you find someone who loves you without fear," I added. "I hope you let someone love you that way too." We didn't hug. We didn't kiss. Just sat there, side by side, in that cold hallway full of what-ifs. Later that night, I went to Cynthia's place. I told her everything again. She didn't yell, didn't flinch. She just held my hand. "I'm not competing with your past, Larry," she said. "But I need to know you want a future. With me." I looked her in the eyes. "I do." And for the first time, I meant it with every inch of who I was. I thought seeing Suzanne in that hospital bed would be the hardest part. I was wrong, because watching her wait, for a donor, for a future, for anything that looked like hope, was worse. Every beep from the machines, every nurse walking past with a clipboard, every time a doctor lowered their voice to Stella, it all felt like a countdown. She tried to stay upbeat. She even made me promise to sneak her new books each visit. "Nothing sad, nothing about death," she'd said, grinning with that sharp little smirk of hers. But behind her eyes, I saw it. She was scared, not just of dying, but of vanishing, of being forgotten, of her story ending before it even really began. One afternoon, while Stella was talking with a cardiologist in hushed tones, Suzanne and I were alone, playing Scrabble on her bed tray. "You and Mom," she said casually, laying down the word frail. "You still love her?" The question hit me sideways. I set down my tiles carefully. Love's a complicated word. Sounds like a no. Sounds like I don't want to mess anything else up. She shrugged. "You didn't mess it up. She does that on her own." I looked at her, this fragile kid with the wisdom of someone who'd been through too much too soon. "She's trying," I said. "She always is," she whispered. Then more softly, "But she's tired, and I'm tired, and I don't want to die while everyone's still pretending everything's fine." I didn't know what to say, so I held her hand. That night, I sat on the balcony at Cynthia's apartment, staring at the stars that barely blinked behind the city haze. She brought me tea, black, bitter, the way she knew I hated it but claimed it built character. "I want to ask you something," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "That sounds ominous. If you were me, and you found out you were a match for a heart transplant, would you do it?" She blinked. "You're a match." I nodded. "Partial. It's rare. I've been on the registry since the accident. Some rehab counselor signed me up without asking. Apparently, my tests flagged me as a possibility." Cynthia sat down beside me, slowly. "You'd be alive, Larry," she said. "You'd still have your life. I'd have it, but not like this. There's a risk. Surgery. Recovery. I'd lose a lot, but she'd get a chance. One I almost didn't get myself." Cynthia didn't say anything right away. Then finally, "What does Stella say?" "She doesn't know. No one does. They're still hoping for another donor." "You're not her father," she said gently. You're not her blood. No. But I'm part of her story now. I stayed up all night thinking about it. About the people who'd stood by me when I almost died. About the second chance I was given. And about this girl who still believed, somehow, that life could get better. The next day, I called the hospital. I told them to run the full compatibility panel. 2 days later, I got the results. Full match. Not just partial. Full. And now it was real. Stella met me at the hospital cafe, her hands shaking around a paper cup of tea. I could barely look at her. I need to tell you something, I said. She looked up, eyes rimmed red. She's getting worse. They say maybe days, not weeks now. I took a deep breath. I'm a match, Stella. Her head snapped up. What? I found out by accident. I've been on the registry. They did more tests. I'm a full match. She stared at me, like I just told her the sky was falling. You're not serious. I am. You can't. You can't give your heart to her. I shook my head. Not my heart. My kidney. Sorry, bad storytelling. She gasped, then smacked my shoulder hard. You idiot. I laughed. I actually laughed, even as the tears started running down her cheeks. I'd do it, I said. If it helps. If it gives her a chance. She covered her mouth with her hand, sobbing quietly. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for us? I leaned forward. Because I nearly died once. And if I can stop someone else from floating toward that light too soon, I have to. Especially someone who still has so much to say. It wasn't about redemption anymore. It wasn't about trying to win Stella back. It was about Suzanne. The next few weeks were a blur. Testing, paperwork, long nights on Cynthia's couch. She never once tried to talk me out of it. She just held my hand during appointments, drove me to checkups, brought snacks and sarcasm in equal measure. You're doing this for her, she'd say. But you're doing it with me. Don't forget that. The transplant was scheduled for mid-November. And the night before, Suzanne asked to see me alone. I don't want to be the reason you lose part of yourself, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You're not, I told her. You're the reason I remembered I had one. That morning, I watched her being wheeled into surgery, for lines snaking from her arms, eyes wide with hope and fear. I squeezed her hand and whispered, I'll see you on the other side, kid. Then I turned, signed the consent form, and let go of everything I'd been holding onto for too long. The pain came in waves. Not just the physical pain that was expected. The dull ache in my side where they took the kidney, the stiffness in my joints, the slow crawl back to mobility. No, the physical stuff I could handle. It was the emotional bruises that caught me off guard. I woke up in recovery groggy and dry-mouthed, the room sterile and humming. Cynthia was there, holding my hand, her other hand resting on a dog-eared paperback she hadn't even opened. You're awake, she said gently. Either that or I'm haunting you. She smiled, but her eyes were rimmed with exhaustion. You scared the hell out of me. You still here? Of course I'm still here. And just like that, I felt something shift. But even as I recovered, slow steps down hospital hallways, tasteless food, a constant parade of nurses and fluorescent lighting. I could feel Stella's shadow nearby. She didn't visit, not at first. Just sent a message the day after surgery. Stella, she's stable. The doctors say your kidney's working perfectly. Thank you. No hearts. No pleasantries. Just the bare truth, delivered with surgical precision. I didn't expect more, but I wanted more. One evening, 5 days after the surgery, Cynthia helped me ease into the passenger seat of her car to head home. She drove quietly, one hand on the wheel, the other occasionally brushing mine as if reminding me she was there. I need to ask, she said as we pulled into my apartment complex. Do you still love her? The question wasn't loaded. It wasn't bitter. It was honest, sincere in a way that only made it harder to lie. I don't know, I admitted. I think a part of me always will. Not the part that wants a future, but the part that remembers who I used to be when I met her. She nodded slowly. Okay, that's fair. And you? I asked, turning to face her. You still believe in us? I believe in the version of you that showed up for a scared little girl and gave her a second chance, she said. But I need to know that version of you still has room for someone who stayed. I reached for her hand and held it tight. I'm trying. I really am. The next morning, there was a knock on the door. I shuffled over, still sore, expecting maybe Gary or a neighbor. But it was Stella. No makeup, no pretense. Just a pale, tired woman holding a Tupperware container of soup like it was a peace offering. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. Cynthia appeared behind me in the hallway, her face unreadable. "I'll give you 2 minutes," she said, brushing past us and grabbing her bag. "CYN," I started. "It's okay," she said, squeezing my arm lightly. "I trust you. Just don't stay stuck in what already ended." The door clicked shut behind her. I turned to Stella. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," she said, setting the soup down on the counter. "But I had to thank you. Properly." "You already did." "No," she said. "Not for everything. Not for risking your life. Not for saving hers." I leaned against the kitchen counter, wincing. "How is she?" "She's doing great. Her color's coming back. She's eating again. She keeps asking if she can text you." "You don't want her to?" Stella looked at me, her eyes glassy. "I want her to have boundaries. I want her to know she's loved without needing to rely on you to survive." "Is that how you felt with me?" She hesitated. "Sometimes." I looked away. "I'm trying to be something steady, Stella. For myself. For Cynthia. For once in my life." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I'm here." Then she pulled out a folded piece of paper from her coat and placed it on the counter. "What's this?" "My divorce papers," she said. "Filed and signed." I stared at the paper. "You're really doing it?" "I have to. Not for you. Not for anyone else. For me. And for Suzanne." I nodded slowly. "Good. That's good." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "But I need to be honest with you, Larry." My stomach tightened. "About what?" "I loved you. More than I knew how to admit. And I think a part of me still does. But love built on pain, it doesn't last. It just burns." I nodded. "I know." We stood there in silence for a moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I hope you and Cynthia make it. She's strong. Steady. She reminds me of who I used to be, before everything got messy." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. Stella walked to the door, her hand resting on the knob. "You saved Suzanne's life. I'll never forget that. But now it's time for you to live yours." And she left. No drama. No tears. Just closure. The kind I didn't think people like us ever got. That night I called Cynthia. "I'm sorry I let her in," I said. "I know. But I needed to see if you would let her go. I have. I'm ready now. For this. For us." She was quiet for a long time. Then finally, "Okay. Then come over. But only if you're ready to stop surviving and start living." They don't tell you what comes after the big moments. They don't tell you that once you've survived the fire, there's still smoke in your lungs. That once the person you love says, "I trust you," you still have to wake up the next morning and prove they were right too. Moving forward with Cynthia felt like standing on new ground. Unsteady at first, but solid beneath if I didn't overthink every step. We didn't jump into anything dramatic. No U-Haul. No toothbrushes side by side. It was simpler than that. It was movie nights, her head resting on my shoulder. It was helping her water her chaotic jungle of houseplants. It was laughing about bad dates we'd both survived before finding each other. I'd never known love could be quiet. No roller coaster. No storm. Just 2 people choosing each other again. Every day. Then one night, as we were cleaning up dinner, her terrible attempt at lasagna, my slightly less terrible garlic bread. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Again. I frowned, wiping my hands and picking up. "Hello. Is this Mr. Larry Henderson?" "Yes. This is Dr. Patel from General Memorial. I'm Suzanne Miller's cardiologist." My heart stopped. "She's okay," he said quickly. "Sorry, should have led with that. Nothing urgent. Just Something came up in her recent labs. I walked out to the balcony. Cynthia watched me from the kitchen, worry creeping across her face. "What is it?" I asked. "There's a possible complication with the kidney." My legs buckled a little. I grabbed the railing. "Is it rejecting?" "Not exactly. It's functioning, but her body's developed a reaction. It's rare, but not unheard of. We're adjusting medications, but we need you to come in for a follow-up." "Me?" "We need to run cross-matching again, and possibly collect some tissue samples. There's a chance your immune markers hold clues that could help us tailor her treatment." I nodded, numb. "Okay. When?" "Tomorrow morning." "I know it's short notice." I hung up, heart pounding in my ears. Cynthia came outside. "What's going on?" "Suzanne," I said. "Something's off. They need me back in for testing." She nodded slowly. "Do you want me to come?" I looked at her, and in that moment, I realized I didn't want to walk into that hospital alone ever again. Yes, the hospital felt different this time. Not like a battlefield. More like a memory I hadn't finished processing. I saw the same receptionist, the same nurse with the gentle voice who'd wheeled me into surgery. They ran the tests. Blood. Imaging. More questions than answers. Stella was already there when I stepped out of the lab. She looked older somehow. Not in a bad way. Just worn. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I didn't do it for you." She smiled. "I know. That's what makes it mean more." We sat in the waiting room for a while, Suzanne asleep behind the glass. "She talks about you," Stella said softly. "Still, as if you're just out of town, and when you come back, everything will go back to the way it was." I leaned forward. "She's strong. She's terrified, but she hides it well." Silence stretched between us. "I'm not coming back," I said finally. "Not like before." "I know," she said again with a faint nod. "I didn't ask you to." She turned to me. "Are you happy?" I glanced through the window at Cynthia, who was sitting on a bench outside, legs crossed, sipping bad coffee and reading a mystery novel with a half-smile. "Yes," I said. "I think I finally am." Stella nodded. "Good." We didn't talk much after that. The tests took hours. By the time we left, the sun was low, and the air had turned cold. Cynthia slipped her arm into mine as we walked to the car. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, just reminded that love doesn't always end cleanly." "It rarely does," she said. "But sometimes, that mess is what makes the new beginning matter more." That night, back at her place, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, her breath steady beside me. I thought about everything we'd been through, the chaos, the love that almost destroyed me, the girl in the hospital bed who carried my kidney and a piece of my heart. And I realized I wasn't just living after something anymore. I was living through it, and past it. For the first time in a long time, my life wasn't defined by what I'd lost, but by what I was choosing. And I was choosing peace. I was choosing her. They say the loudest parts of life are the ones you never see coming. The crashes, the heartbreaks, the shouting matches behind closed doors. But nobody talks about what comes after. The quiet. Not the empty kind. Not the silence that stings. But the kind that wraps around you gently, like a hand resting on your shoulder. A reminder that chaos doesn't last forever. That's where I was now, living in the quiet that followed. Suzanne was stable again. The reaction to the transplant had been managed with new meds and close monitoring. The doctors called it a temporary complication. I called it a bullet dodged. She was recovering, walking the halls again, giving the nurses a hard time, complaining about the food, even texting me book recommendations as if we were part of some secret club. Every time my phone buzzed with her name, it felt like proof. I hadn't failed. She'd made it. We both had. As for Stella, we didn't talk much after that last hospital visit. She sent the occasional update, a photo of Suzanne reading in bed, or a short message letting me know about a follow-up appointment. It wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. We'd finally found our boundary, gratitude without dependency, and that was enough. The bigger shift, though, the one that mattered, was with Cynthia. I'd spent so much of my life chasing the idea of something intense, thinking love had to feel like fireworks or storms to be real. But Cynthia taught me that love could also feel like calm, like knowing exactly where you stand without needing to ask, like exhaling finally after holding your breath too long. We started making real plans, nothing flashy, just a weekend getaway, a joint savings account, a key to each other's places, the kind of steps that felt small but meant everything. One Saturday morning, we were in the kitchen, her in one of my old t-shirts, me fumbling with pancake batter, when she turned and said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd met earlier?" I paused. I used to, but now, I think we met exactly when we were supposed to. Any earlier and I wouldn't have been ready. She smiled. Yeah, you were kind of a disaster. Kind of. Okay. Majorly. I laughed, flipping a sad-looking pancake. You loved me anyway. Correction. I like you now. Love is still pending review. But I saw the gleam in her eye. Later that afternoon, we went to visit Suzanne. She was sitting up in bed, hair tied in a messy bun, sketching something in a notebook. When we walked in, she looked up and grinned. "Took you long enough. I've been waiting to beat you at Scrabble." I held up the board game like it was sacred. Rematch of the decade. Cynthia pulled up a chair beside her. "Mind if I join?" Suzanne looked between us, then smirked. "You two are like, weirdly adorable. It's kind of gross." "Gross is how you spell your snack drawer." I shot back. "Let's go." We played for an hour, laughing too much, teasing each other like old friends. Felt normal, and I hadn't realized how much I craved that. A normal day, a good one. When we left the hospital, Cynthia squeezed my hand. "She loves you," she said. "She's a kid who needed someone to show up. And you did." That night, I found myself journaling. Something I hadn't done since before the accident. I wrote about the curveballs, about the woman I thought would be my forever, and how she turned out to be a storm I wasn't strong enough to weather. About the little girl who reminded me why I chose to live when I could have given up. And about the woman who came after the wreckage, not to rescue me, but to walk with me through the healing. I wrote about Gary, too. Still sarcastic. Still the guy who called to roast me weekly but always checked in just enough to show he cared. And I wrote one line I underlined twice. Sometimes the person you become is the apology you never get to say. I'd become someone I liked. Not perfect, not heroic, but whole. And that had to be enough. 1 year after the surgery, we threw a little celebration. Cynthia baked a lopsided cake. Suzanne had just started high school, her new meds keeping her healthy. Stella came with her, standing quietly in the back, clapping softly during our impromptu toast. No big emotions, just mutual understanding. She hugged me once before leaving and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Larry." I watched her go, and felt nothing heavy, just peace, the quiet that followed. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed my story, please like and subscribe for more. See you next time.